Okay, could I ask everybody to please rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome everybody. Today is October 1st, believe it or not, and this is the Board of Selectmen meeting. Before we begin, our heartfelt condolences to the Lahamadou family. I had the privilege of serving on the FinCom with Jack Lahamadou, who very intelligent man who contributed a lot of good discussion and contributed a lot to the town. Always there and willing to help. So our condolences to the Lahamadou family, and Jack, you will be sorely missed. And thank you for that. Okay.
On that same token,
Sure.
John Mativier, our building inspector, lost his father last week.
Okay. Sorry to
It
hear
was
that.
very sudden, and John didn't even tell us about it.
Okay.
But he's been out. He was out today. We expect him back tomorrow.
Okay, our condolences to John, too, and his family. Okay, on to town business. Everybody, just make sure you sign the warrant. I think that's already been accomplished. We'll suspend our normal business here and move on to ask town accountant to come on up, town treasurer, excuse me. Did I say that right? I got that wrong. Jackie did. Treasurer, sorry. Treasurer collector, sorry. Come on, Jackie and Margaret, why don't you guys come on up and fill us in on the bonds, but do it so that we don't all fall asleep.
Okay.
I know how bond accounting can go after a while. Been there, done that, and still do it. It can make you a little sleepy at times. So.
Yeah, a lot. It's all right. You can say a lot, believe me.
And that's coming from a CFO.
Yeah.
We're in
Former
trouble.
CFO.
Okay, we're getting ready to finance the ESCO bonds. We're actually going to do it 2 weeks from today. We had planned to do them as QEC, qualified energy conservation bonds, meaning you were awarded a grant from the Department of Energy. And what that means is we would issue the bonds on a taxable basis. Usually you would issue it on a tax-exempt basis. Most municipalities do that. The rate is lower. With the QECB bonds, you get a subsidy payment from the government, which is equal to the lesser of the interest payment you'd be paying, or 70% of the rate on the day you price. Because last year they passed that Budget Act of 2011, and they have to cut 1.2 trillion from the budget. Nothing has been done with that. They're now talking. 2 weeks ago, it came out that they're looking to basically reduce the subsidy payments on QECBs, the Build America bonds, and so forth. So this has come up right as we're getting ready to sell your QECB issues. So I wanted to make you aware of that. Right now, for fiscal 2013, they're talking about cutting the subsidy 7.6%. So instead of it being a 70% reimbursement, it would be 63.4%. The difference is about probably $3,000 in FY13. So that's one of the concerns. It's just we don't know going forward whether it's going to happen. If nothing is in place by the beginning of January, then it will happen. That's not to say that they're not going to get something done probably after the election in November. It's just there's no way to predict it. In talking to Mike and Jackie, I know Mike feels that he doesn't think it's going to happen, and his feeling is to proceed with the QECB issue. The big question is, do you want to take the risk of, with the QECB issue, you have what they call extraordinary redemption provisions. That means if something were to happen, like the subsidy were to go away, we could call the bonds and then reissue them on a tax-exempt basis. So we do have an out, so to speak. It just would mean then issuing the bonds all over again. So you then have to incur issuance costs twice. The question is, originally when the project came up, it was that if we could get it done on a tax-exempt basis with the basic savings, the projected savings would be enough to cover the debt service. We can do that if you choose to do it instead of doing it and run the risk of having your subsidy be cut on a tax-exempt basis. So the question is, how do you want to proceed?
So my question would be for Mike, is in the contract that we have, is, we talked about a break-even point, a baseline, and then all the improvements, that what would be the give back from the company that we engaged? Was there any safeguard there that if we couldn't execute these government bonds, government subsidized bonds, that they would up the baseline and be able to pick up the additional expense if we had to go through a more costly bond?
No, we based all the numbers and the payback period or the cash flow on 2% bonds.
Mm-hmm.
The QEC bonds are way below, the net is way below, it's below 1% probably,
With the subsidy.
with the subsidy.
Right.
Margaret's been able, based on current bond interest, she's been able to, I think instead of a 15-year bond, if we did a 16-year bond,
Which is what the projected savings was. Based on today's current rates, we could get the savings to basically cover the debt service over those 16 years on a tax exempt basis. Right now, rates are at historical lows. You're looking at the issue I ran as the example was just over a 2% TIC, which is how you award the bonds. It was like a 2.04, so 205, say. Basically, we have the flexibility when we price the bonds as long as you meet certain payment schedules, as you'd be able to basically structure the bonds any way you wanted to be able to make your savings every year cover the debt service.
Okay.
So if that is your goal, we can do it. If you feel like that they're not going to cut the subsidy this year or next year, or even if they do, you have that extraordinary redemption provision, which will then allow you to then call them and then reissue them again. If you feel that that's the way you want to proceed, then we can still do that. I just wanted you to be aware that these are now the risks that have come up.
So if we reissued, we'd still be at risk for interest rate risk.
You would.
Because
I
you're gonna-
mean,
you can't
it
assume
could.
that rates will stay where they are now.
There's talk of rates staying like this through 2015.
Well, the Fed's come out and said that, yeah. So.
Right. So that's not to say that it could very well be. I mean, we're probably anticipating at least current municipal rates staying like this for another year, maybe even longer.
Right. So the tax exempt rate is how much?
Just over, for 15 years, just over 2%.
Okay. Then we've got 2% factored into our model for the baseline in order to break even. So we're off about 5 basis points. Okay.
possibly.
Is there, again, my question is to go back to the company and ask, was
No,
there
the
any?
company, the contract's written as such, it's just based on the
Yeah,
savings.
understand.
So, we've got the interest rate risk. We have that risk.
Okay.
They don't have that risk.
Right.
And the reason why I asked both Jackie and Margaret to be here tonight, as Margaret stated, well, both Jackie and Margaret are they need to be risk adverse. They deal with the money.
Understand.
I, on the other hand, am not as risk adverse as they are, but the reason for that is two reasons. Number one, I think the sequestration issue is a game of chicken between the Dems and the Republicans, and it has to be settled before January 2nd, because if they don't, of that $1.2 trillion cut, $500 billion is coming out of the Defense Department budget. And economists say that if sequestration does occur, it will send the economy into another recession.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think, regardless of who gets elected president, that they can let this happen. And if it does happen, we're only at risk for, $3,800 this year. We've got money budgeted for principal payment this year, but we have none. We have no principal payment this year.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got money in this year's budget to handle that if it should happen this year. The other thing that I would hate to lose is that subsidy.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about between $400,000 and $500,000 over the 15-year period.
Mm-hmm.
That's a savings to the town. Now, we did talk about, and we could, do ESCO Part 2 on the, put an addendum to the contract and do an additional 400 or even 500. I probably wouldn't want to use the whole thing, but we could do another couple 100,000 or more in energy conservation measures.
So once we're accepted into the program, if the government doesn't cut that program, are we accepted for life of the bonds?
Well, no, you
duration
have
for
6
15?
months from when you awarded it, which was
Right.
back in June, so we have to get this done by the end of December.
But beyond that, once we're in the program,
Once you're in the
we're securing
program,
the cash flow for the rest
it'll
of the
go, as
15.
long as you, and this probably falls to Jackie, as long as you complete the paperwork to apply for the subsidy, you will get reimbursed for it. So yes, it's on you now as the town to physically apply for it. You will get it over the life of the issue unless they come in and cut the program.
So that 7.5% reduction is equivalent to about $500,000 over the life of the
No,
bond.
it's only 3,600 in this, they're only talking for fiscal 13, that's 7.6%. So it's about 3,600 in this fiscal year.
Okay. And then would go back to the normal escalation? 70%?
Well, assuming they go back and fix it, yes, it should go back to the 70%.
Okay. So now that we've gone over bond accounting 1, our options are, we go the government subsidized route, or we go with
A tax exempt.
full-fledged tax exempt
Exactly.
bonds. What's the interest rate difference in the two?
A compatible community that sold the day after the report came out, which was lower rated than you got a 3.57, but that was on a 20-year issue, and that was a QECB issue.
Okay.
20-year bonds right now probably, I'll say 250 to be conservative.
Okay, on the tax exempt side.
On tax exempt, yeah.
What is it again?
250.
So the other question is, if we extend another year, are we going beyond the useful life of the improvements within the ESCO? In other
it
words,
was-
if we're gonna fund it for
okay.
15.
It was
would
part
that-
of the projected savings. Remember I said I went at that end of the year, I took it off of the savings, so I'm assuming it was, the useful life was that long then.
Well, the savings are forever.
Right.
Understand,
Um,
right,
and a lot of ESCOs do go 20 years.
right,
I picked 15
right. So our ESCO's for 15.
because we could.
Right, but the bond will be 16, so are we off?
On the tax exempt, and that was only because I had that extra year just to give me the flexibility as far as having the debt service meet the savings.
Right,
That's not to say that that's set in stone. Again, the structure would have to depend on whatever the rates are the day you price.
understand.
So that
So
could go back.
worst case scenario would be if we went the ESCO, if we went the government bond side, the subsidized side, if it doesn't work out, we would be at risk for $3,600 in administrative fees to rebond and go to tax.
Well,
exempt.
no, it would be 3,600 in additional interest expense in FY13, and then to reissue it in, say, 6 months, you'd be looking at another issuance cost of, well, we
$1,000.
estimated probably about 50,000 to do it, so probably 45, 50,000.
Over the life.
It's just a
upfront.
one-time, it's a
One-time fee.
upfront cost,
But
which
we-
you can
we-
always include in the bond issue, or if you get a premium on the bonds, you can then use that to pay your issuance cost.
Right, okay. All right,
The only other negative is because this came out with the time, and that first bond issue sold right before this news came out. Margaret said that there's a possibility it would, the interest in the bond issue may be lower. So we might not get as much activity in bidding.
The other community only received one bid. It was sold on a competitive basis, so that is a risk that you could come across.
so we could be out there soliciting tax exempt bonds and nobody's.
Or no,
there's buyers.
taxable bonds.
Taxable bonds, right, there'll be no
Which,
buyers.
if that's the case, we just pull the deal
Right.
and then resell it as a tax exempt. So we do have that flexibility. You're talking two different buyers at that point, so it's not like you'd run the risk then of saying, you would do okay if we had a ratio as a tax exempt. I'm not really concerned about having everyone look at you, seeing it one way, and then coming back, in
Right.
2 days another way. So,
It wouldn't
it
have
is
any
something
reflection upon the project, that it's.
no,
that's in there.
no.
Right. it's solid, so.
Right.
Okay.
So we have the option of going through with the sale on the 15th, and if we don't get a bid, we obviously have to rebid, but that may be a signal, well, we probably should go with tax exempt instead of tax. But we could make that decision,
That's a
2 weeks
secondary
from
decision.
today.
Right.
Right. So Mike, your recommendation is that we go with the government side,
QECB.
QECB? Okay. Any questions for?
Can you, what are the two differences in the rates again?
Probably about 100 basis points.
So we have a tax exempt, which is the QECB.
No, the taxable is the QECB.
Thank you,
That's the
okay.
subsidy, and that's probably say 350. And then a tax exempt would be about a 250. And that's probably conservative, but I'd rather have you estimate it high than come in lower.
That's the gross interest.
That's the gross debt.
The net is gonna be less.
The net
than
on the
1%.
QECB would
On
be,
the tax exempt?
on the
less than one?
taxable would be
Taxable.
less.
Taxable, okay.
Yes, because you'd be getting a subsidy, which if last time I checked, it was a 4.39 was the rate, so you'd be getting 70% of 4.39%
Back.
back, or the lesser, or the interest, your actual interest payment, if that was less at that point. Which it very well could be for the first few years, just because typically when you issue bonds, you start off low and then the rate gradually increases, so.
So the haircut piece that the government may take them out of the government side is still a better deal for us is if we went tax exempt.
As far as your net cost
Yeah, net
to you
cost.
goes, yes.
Overall.
Even at a discounted rate. In other words,
Right.
if we don't
Yes.
get the 70, it's only gonna go down to what? Does that number been?
63.4.
63.
So at 63.4 buy down of 4.39, I think you said?
Yeah, it's still,
What's that-
it's still,
what's that-
yes,
yeah.
it's still a
You're still
savings.
So it's still less than 2.5%.
Exactly.
So we're
Okay.
still ahead.
You're still ahead.
So we can
yeah.
still go that route and decide to go that route even if the government knocks down the subsidy. Because it's still less than going 2.5%
Right.
Right.
on the tax
Tax
exempt
exempt,
side.
correct.
Where we could get hurt is on the taxable, on the non-tax side.
You could get hurt going forward on the taxable side, whereas they
Right.
decide to eliminate the subsidy altogether.
Right. Yeah, if that
Or
subsidy
But
goes
if
away.
that, if that goes away, then
Or
you
if there's
have,
no buyers, right? As
if
well,
there's no
that's-
buyers, then we would have to sell on a tax exempt basis at that point.
Who's buying the taxable versus the tax exempt typically? What kind of buyers
we don't
difference
really
do you see?
have-
General public, right?
Well, I can tell you that
Institutional
Roosevelt,
investors?
the Roosevelt and Cross was the underwriter on the other issue, and they're a big underwriter. They're based out of New York. They have an office in Connecticut. They'll probably submit a bid on you, because they have the desk that will deal with both the taxable side and the tax exempt, and they do bid on tax exempt side also. In talking to another underwriter out of Boston, they said just because they don't really deal with the taxable side, she said there's other parts of the country that we wouldn't even know that just may see you guys in the market that day and say, oh geez, we like the credit.
Right.
It'd be something to be interested in. So that's why on a competitive basis, you're better off staying competitive as opposed to trying to negotiate it with it. Because if we were to negotiate it, we would just look at firms that we know that would bid, and we may be missing firms altogether.
So what about timeline? When do we need the cash? That's the other question.
Well, you have notes that are coming due on the 30th?
October 30th.
October 30th. So you'd be getting the money on the 24th of October. So we'd be pricing in 2 weeks from today, the 15th. So you'd have to take a vote that night at your meeting to award the bonds,
Mhm.
if it's successful, to the winning bidder, and then you'd be signing the bonds and paperwork afterwards. And then
So-
you'd have the funds on the 24th.
What about payments to the contractors?
Well, we just received our first draft invoice today,
Mm-hmm.
and once our OPM and I go through it, and we say, yes, this looks good, which will be another week or maybe two, because I'm not gonna be here next week. We have 30 days to pay,
Okay.
technically 30. I think we actually changed it to 45 in the contract, so not till November.
But you already have $1.5 million that we borrowed on a short-term basis.
we'd
So
have
when,
to-
do those notes hopefully come due after the?
Yes,
after
those come due
January
on,
1?
no, those come due on December, October
October 30th.
30th.
October 30th.
So on the 24th, you'll get the bond proceeds, and then the following week, you'll use those to pay back the $1.5 million.
Okay, I got it, okay. So I like Mike's idea.
Okay.
I like Mike's idea of going with the the government subsidy
Okay.
piece. Because at worst case scenario, we're only looking at a 7.5% cut of 70%.
Exactly.
And if you take that rate, that's a better rate than 2.5%.
And that's, again, I tend to think it's not gonna happen, but on the other hand, I have to look at the other side of it too, so,
The only worst case scenario is if the full government subsidy gets wiped out, then we're paying 4.39 versus 2.5.
right, you're paying whatever the rate on the bond is, which would probably less than the 4.39 is the, percent of the subsidy at that point.
Oh, okay.
So you could be paying less on the bond, you'll probably be paying less on the bonds,
Yeah.
but
But
then.
still better than it's still worse than
Yes.
2.5. See, I'm on the other side of the balance.
Yeah.
Still, all right, I got it. Okay. Well, I think it's worth going after the government subsidy piece because what we think worst case scenario is 7.5%. If it gets wiped out completely, then we've really boosted up our interest expense. But
But then we also, don't we have the reissue cost, 45 to 50 if we have to reissue?
right,
So that's a big number.
right.
What's the likelihood of that scenario playing out if we go with the QECBs? Your professional opinion.
I think it'll be a few years out if that were. If I had to guess, I do agree with Mike. I don't think that it's going to come down to this whole thing. I think something is going to happen. They're going to end up having to cut something at some point just because they can't keep going the way they're going. My only fear is that, like Mike said, they're not going to cut the defense budget. No, but this is just such a smaller piece of it that only affects cities and towns, and they look at like, well, you guys have the ability to raise money to pay for these things, so it probably would impact you guys less than another area. I think maybe down the line that they're going to look to do away with tax exempt bonds, and this would be the first step in doing it, is by reducing your subsidy. So they say we'll give you 7%, 70%, and then the following year they'll say, well, we're going to cut it, and then the following year they're going to cut it again and again until
All the
it
way to
eventually
zero?
phases- Yeah. eventually
There's a
phases
call
out.
option there, right? We could call
There is,
those
you have a
bonds.
call, yeah, so you can call it if
Go
you
back
want
to
to.
the state. Well, go back to
You go back and reissue bonds then.
Right.
right. So
Or
we'll-
if you had the funds, you could pay off the fund, you could pay off whatever was remaining on it too,
Yeah.
so.
All right, makes sense.
So does the downside, Mr. Chair, if I might?
Yeah, sure. go
Does the downside of the reissue cost weigh in negatively to going with a QECB,
Well,
given where the savings are in the QECB at this snapshot in time?
I mean, it is a negative, but
Of course.
most of the time, you can, roll the issue costs into the bond, and, it'll cost you a few basis points on
Right.
top of that, but it wouldn't affect the budget directly.
Okay, that's what I'm wondering, if there's gonna be a big swing, if that ever came up, that issue, it wouldn't dramatically.
No, because all
Budget
the
out.
issue costs of this bond are, even, and we're gonna talk briefly about the school bond, the issue costs there are gonna be rolled into the bond as well. That's what we normally do. The only thing we didn't do, we had some fees that we didn't roll into the bond. We had a fee for the bands of $100 and a fee of $500, which we adjusted.
Right, we did a free
The
cash.
adjustment, right?
Yeah.
Adjustment.
Okay.
Reserve transfer, take care of that. Okay,
All right, thank you.
so do we actually, do you need actual vote from us on this, Mike, or is this just a?
No, I guess I just wanted you to be aware of the issues coming up, and, just let the bond bid go as planned on the 15th, and if things, go south on us at that point, then we can, take another, we have options.
So my next question is for Jackie, are you comfortable with where we're going with this? Is there anything in your, from a statute standpoint that says, we should be going the route where we know where the cost is, or?
Oh, no, I mean, I just, my preference would be to be more conservative. But, I mean, certainly if something did change and we were to lose even the entire subsidy, I mean, there's the out provision, so,
Right.
we could get out of it.
Okay. All right. All right, so you don't need an actual vote for us, but, so
No.
we'll go in that direction.
Okay,
But
good.
that's, I mean, again, a non-binding vote, we comfortable with that as far as direction's concerned?
Yeah, I think he laid it out pretty.
Okay, Finance Committee wanna chime in on this
Yeah,
at
say-
all?
It sounds like you guys have it. I think
Yeah.
going with those taxable bonds sounds like the best idea, and since you have an out, so the whole thing sounds workable to me.
Not only that, the rate still is better than the tax exempt bonds, even with the other things considered, so I have a no-brainer.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Okay, so that's that.
Okay,
Thank you.
no
Okay,
problem.
we have,
Appreciate
now
the
we need
lesson.
we need to talk about the school, potential school bonds. Do we want to talk about that, or do we?
Well, you had a question about the timing. And
Yeah, I had yeah.
when interest
Okay.
was due and principal
Right.
would be due.
So on these particular bonds, my biggest question was, the school's a 3-year project.
Yep.
So when we get approved, if this all happens,
Mhm.
so we don't need the 25 million or whatever we're gonna borrow on day one. Can we borrow in stages?
Mhm.
Okay, so we.
Well, basically, what you want to do is obviously once the contract is awarded, then you're going to start running into your bigger expenses. Now, you said probably in the spring, more than likely that'll happen
It'll go out to bid
out
in
in
the
the bid in the
spring.
spring. Okay, so you're looking at the spring, probably early summer before you're really going to need to start paying bills.
Mhm.
Rates are still low, typically in the past what would happen is you'd get awarded, you'd take out a note for, say X amount of dollars. So if your share of it is, say, 30 million, maybe the first year you borrow 10 million as a note. When it comes through the following year, you've now incurred more expense, so you add another 10 million to it, so you have 20 million worth of notes until the project ends. And that third year, and then you issue bonds. What a lot of communities are doing is because rates are so low, they're issuing a good chunk of their share up front as a bond issue. So you have
To capture that low rate.
exactly to capture the lower
Gotcha.
rate. So you can do that. And again, how much would depend on basically your cash flow, what your spending needs are going to be over the next 2 years. That being because it's tax exempt, you have, you run into, and again, this is not going to really be, your arbitrage problem is you can't earn more than the bond yield on your bond.
Oh.
Um,
I say, so would it spend some money in that account?
So,
There's no hedging. We just can't. We can't hedge the balance sheet of the town.
right. So, you could
That's too bad.
conceivably borrow,
Did you come from a hedge fund?
No.
you could conceivably borrow, say,
Thinking
10,
from the
15
private sector
million
here for a minute.
at the start of the project.
Mm.
And then you've locked in at a lower rate. I mean, 30-year bond sold last week, 3.16.
Mm-hmm.
A 20-year, 1.999. So 2%.
Wow.
Wow. Can
So
we
we're
get
at
that?
25. So we're looking at probably about 2.5.
2.5. Yeah. So and
Okay.
these are within the last few weeks. So
So
if
the key
things
for us
hold-
there would be, we could go with short-term bonds up until the point where we needed the whole thing.
Yeah.
But then you're riding the yield curve, and that's
Exactly.
crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And short-term rates are really low. I mean, that $1.5 million we just borrowed.
About
This
20
is just
basis points, 30 basis points.
50, yeah. And if we were to do it like a full disclosure with a legal opinion that got other underwriters involved, you'd be looking at, 20 basis points.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you could conceivably do it as a short-term issue, but that's only for a year.
Right.
That's only good for a
You're
year.
exposed for interest rate risk, and it's a 3-year project, which takes us to 2016, where rates are projected to start to rise.
Exactly.
So we're probably better off to take the full
Take it up
advance,
front.
Yeah, and
put it in the bank.
as much as you can
Right.
to meet your spending test, exactly. And
Right.
then you've locked in at a lower rate.
Yeah,
Yep.
it makes sense. For that little more interest rate, interest expense
Right.
for borrowing the entire thing,
Mm-hmm.
will protect us beyond the 3 years.
From a
For the
lift
next
later on.
23 years,
Right.
22 years, we'll be protected at a nice low rate.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a smart way to do it. So,
So the question is at what point will this impact the tax rate?
You have, so if we, say you do bonds next September, a year from now. So you're not selling until FY14, the big impact, the principal payment wouldn't be until FY15.
right.
Okay.
And that's where we projected $1.66 per thousand in the tax rate. Actually, we have the assessors here, so this is even better. This is perfect. We got everybody here. Yeah. So we looked at basically $1.66 per thousand.
Based on,
Yeah, that was a
Current
Rough
again,
numbers, yeah.
Just kind of
Right.
some rough math.
Right.
Not exact to the penny, but
Yep.
we were looking at. And I hate quoting per thousand, because that's your job, not mine and not Mike's, but that's, but our estimation was like $1.66 per thousand. But that was gonna continue to drop, and that's what I wanted to verify, is that the debt service on those bonds, each year, the payment drops. It's not a
It
fixed
does.
payment.
Right.
Well,
Like your mortgage is a fixed
Your
payment
mortgage-
based on
you-
an
you have-
amortization schedule.
there's two ways you can issue bonds. You can do it what they consider level principal, and if you do that, so your principal payment stays the same, but your interest then gradually decreases. So that's how it decreases.
Right.
If you wanted to do like a mortgage payment, it would be what we call level debt. It costs you more in interest. It's what we call backloaded, meaning most of your principal is at the end of it,
Yep.
and that's where your higher rates are.
Right.
Because bonds, you start off low and then you go up high.
Right.
So that's
So it's reversed from the other way, so your tax impact is higher as you get later
your
into
tax
the
impact.
payment.
Well, your tax impact should actually stay fairly similar because your debt
Should
service
stay level,
is
because the debt service payment
exactly.
is the same.
Okay, it's just a
Yeah.
matter of where
So
your
it's
principal's
level.
getting knocked out.
It's
Right.
level funded, it's just the
Okay.
balance, which we, doesn't really have an effect on the tax rate. It's the payment that has the effect on the tax rate.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right, and then it'll affect too. So then you're paying back principal at a slower rate at that point. So, typically, if you look, a lot of your projects are falling away in the next few years. A lot of your existing debt.
Right,
That's what I had asked, yeah.
right.
And if you did level payments, you're then gonna be increasing your debt on those later years, so that if you had anything else coming on, you've
Right.
already got a good big principal payment already, then you'd be adding to it at that point.
Because
So,
that balance has an effect on what we can borrow going forward.
Yep.
Right.
Based on our overall.
The amount of your
levy,
yeah, you
overall
have,
borrowing
it's
limit.
5% of equalized valuation, which is, it's a ridiculously huge number,
Yeah, we got a
but
huge number out there, we potentially could. we
you,
could-
exactly, if you were talking, 50 million here, another 50 million, if you started throwing in all these like crazy projects, somebody said, oh, let's do this, then you could conceivably bump up against your debt limit.
Right.
But with the school project and you're getting the grant, it would then fall under 70B, which is actually outside your debt limit.
Okay.
So,
Oh, so that's
Really?
exempted?
yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
then
So maybe
it
my-
wouldn't affect you, it wouldn't actually affect your debt.
Maybe
this.
we should look at that level of payment, just as a comparison, Mike. I know the one we have now is, it's a decreasing debt service. I think we should take, just for comparison's sake, look at the consistent payment over the 25 years.
Right,
Just to
pencil
see
them
what,
both
yeah, I
out.
would look at that to see, so that we have both
It,
options.
it works out to 3 cents per thousand
Difference?
drop every single year.
Oh,
All right.
And by the time you get to the 20th year, you're down to like $1.09, something like that.
Yeah, but we should do a side-by-side comparison, just to do our due diligence on that issue, to see which way we're gonna go. But I would be more inclined to go with the non-fixed payment, go with declining, basically simple interest, basically
Well, yeah,
simple
again, it's
interest
why
calculation.
pay more for it if you don't have to.
Right, exactly. And what the good part about that is it starts at $1.66, and
And then
then
it goes
each year,
down.
$33,000 falls off the budget.
Exactly,
So, it's a declining balance
right.
situation. But that's one big assumption, that we're not gonna add anything, we're not gonna buy any other
Well, yeah.
big-ticket items. We got fire trucks, police got, we got all
Well,
that
yeah,
stuff. Other stuff
there's
we have
always
to do.
something that's gonna be
Right, exactly.
needed, so, yeah.
All right, good.
Okay,
So my questions are answered on that. But we should do that side by side comparison.
yeah, I'd like to see that one.
Right.
That'd be helpful.
And not go with the short-term borrowing, because then we'd be really subject ourselves
yeah,
to
I
the
mean,
figures.
the
Yeah.
other thing is too, is, with your grant payment from MSBA, they withhold, pretty much, they withhold 5% of it, so at the end, you're gonna be a little short, until the audit's done. So
Right.
there's always gonna be,
Contingency.
so you would wait then to do like the balance of it, could be just a couple million at that point.
Right.
So if it's a little bit higher, 3,
So
4
there's a
years
draw
out.
period there, right? So once we commit, what's the draw period? Is it,
Commit to.
no, well, if we said, what I would like to see, and it's probably, the product's not even out there, is that if we had a $25 million liability that we wanted to borrow, you can borrow it all today, take the $25 million, give it to Jackie, don't spend it all, put it in the bank, earn some money on it. But what I'd like to see is a commitment that your interest rate is 2.5% on a 20-year bond. You have a draw period of 5 years to execute.
You have.
Any products out there like that?
No.
Kind of like a home equity loan. You have a 5-year draw,
No, not only that, but the IRS will look at you and say, listen, you only have 2 years to expend all those proceeds. So if you're only drawing down over it after 5 years, then they're gonna have issues, and they'll come knocking and say,
Okay.
you probably owe us some money.
Okay, all right.
So,
All right,
that was a nice try, though.
That would be, that would be an awesome product. Though.
It would.
You should go to Wall Street with that one. All right. So
Note to self, business idea.
yeah. All right. Well, any other questions for?
I'm good, thank
Bond
you.
accounting 101.
Thank you for
I
clarifying.
think we actually went up to like 2.0.
Well-
Counting
We're up to 202 now.
We're up to that. Yeah, we're almost getting to that graduate level soon.
All right, so, in 2 weeks, you'll have to take the formal vote to hopefully award a good issue at that point, so, you'll have, Mike will get you the rates that day.
All right, awesome.
Thank you.
Great,
All
thank
right,
you.
No
Much
problem.
appreciated.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Okay, we have, again, we have other visitors, so I'm going to ask the, yes.
The next thing before Jackie leaves, did you
Oh.
wanna?
Oh, yeah, Jackie, congratulations. Jackie's been awarded the designation of Certified MA Municipal Collector. Very good. Congratulations, that's awesome. Thank you.
All right. Great. Now when I give you my money,
pay for that.
you'll feel much better.
She's not only, she's a certified treasurer and a certified collector now.
Excellent.
She can collect it and manage it with a certification. I love it.
That's right.
All right, so we
Pay for
need
that
to, why don't we ask
Oh, I
the
got a letter. Or
assessors
assessment
to come on
tomorrow.
up, and then we'll get to FinCom right away. I see Chuck's looking at his watch there, so he's making me nervous.
Well,
we fortunately-
There's much time I can do here tonight, so
All
that's how it goes.
We fortunately have a much less complicated financial situation to discuss with you.
That's for sure.
Really? I was ready to go work on Wall Street after that.
This is pretty cut and dried. What we're here to ask you for is a warrant on the upcoming, an article on the upcoming warrant for the fall town meeting. And we basically need to fund, is this already typed up?
Which
Oh,
article
okay.
are we looking at?
It's on the last page,
two
STM
copies there and-
proposed STM 13-10.
The gist of the situation is this, that we have an abatement liability which we're gonna pay off. There was a decision made by the Supreme Judicial Court that Verizon poles and wires for the fiscal year 2009 were not subject to taxation, and there was a case pending on this which we had held the liability aside for. We have the money to fund the liability directly out of the overlay account. However, the law doesn't allow us to pay the interest on that out of the overlay. So we're here to ask you to, we have released the funds to cover the interest to the overlay reserve surplus, and we can appropriate from there to pay the interest
interest.
liability. So we're just asking for this article to be able to go ahead and do that.
What kind of money are we talking? Do we know?
$8,000,
$900.
$8,900.
That amount will.
That'll be in the vote.
That'll be in the motion.
Right, and that's the interest payment?
Yes.
Okay.
The liability was 31,
And that got settled?
it did, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that's pretty cut and dry. I mean,
Yeah,
pretty easy. I mean,
very simple.
well, we have you here.
I told you that was gonna happen.
Since you so graciously gave us
Columbo
back
on
some
him.
of your reserves. Any more reserves hanging around that we
Well,
can get back?
I knew that was gonna come up. I said, this is.
You knew I was going to ask.
we-
Oh, one more
Absolutely.
question.
I had nothing to do with it.
I know you didn't, I know you
This is
didn't.
a setup, man, come on.
We gotta open this.
Yeah, we'll do that later. Yeah, we'll get that.
We worked out an agreement with Mike last year that we're gonna hold back 5 years' worth of overlay and so every year we'll release the oldest year. And it's to fund stuff like this, that's unexpected liabilities without having to hit the budget if we get something big that comes along that we don't anticipate.
Is that a percentage every year of the budget that you
No,
do for
it's
overlay,
a
or
number
just
that
a
we
rough
have
number?
to take a crystal ball
anticipate.
basically and
Yeah.
figure out what we think the liabilities are gonna be. Historically, we have an actual line item in the budget, although it's not an appropriated amount. We have a line item in the budget that we've allocated at least $70,000 to every year to account for it in the budget. Sometimes we have had to increase that. Other years, we have decreased it to get the tax rate to come out even. We typically use that amount
Right.
because it's one of the last things we fill in on the recap before we submit it. So in some years, we've had big liabilities, we've had, $150,000 in the overlay account. Other years, it's been down to into the 50s and 60s, so. Going forward, we're gonna try and manage it at the 70 range, but in order to do that, we need to have some kind of a reserve in the previous year's accounts that would be available to us to, bring to bear if we need it, so.
So
That's
as we-
the agreement we have. Every year, we're gonna,
Okay,
from here
and
forward.
as we approach the budget season, will we kind of have a number in
Yeah, we
mind?
will, we will. We'll work with Mike to make sure that you guys are aware of what it is. I mean, Jay typically reconciles that account with the town accountant on a regular basis, so that's a known number. Well, going forward, we have a spreadsheet that we keep going forward.
Yeah, I didn't want to blindside you on that.
Yeah, no, I totally anticipated that question was gonna come up, so.
We'll look at every dollar we can scrape together, okay. All right, great.
Yeah, this coming year, it's only gonna be about $5,300. I know we gave you about 150 last year.
175.
175, yeah, it's a small number this year, because it's only 1 year, and it's a year that we didn't have a lot left in, so. But, you know, it goes up, the following year, it's gonna be about 94,000.
Yeah, well, that was the question. Can you do a 5-year projection and get it to Mike so we kind of have a,
Jay,
We have that, I think
yeah,
we actually already gave that.
I
to
have
you.
a copy of that.
that'd be great, so get it to
spreadsheet.
us just to kind
Yeah,
of,
so you can anticipate
it's
that.
just another form of free cash for us, basically.
It is. And that's the way it works, is we release it to surplus if it's not used for anything else.
Right.
It goes to free cash, so
Okay.
that's where it shows up.
All right, any questions? Let's get specific back to the warrant article. Any questions from this board on the warrant article? Okay.
None here.
All right, so when we get to open up the
Right.
warrant, we'll throw it in there.
Okay.
Probably do that right
You want to do it right now? Okay, so I need entertain a motion to open the warrant.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to open the town warrant dated October 29, 2012. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, so the warrant is now open. I would entertain a motion to approve warrant article STM
11.
13-11.
Okay. So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on article STM 13-11. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries, so your warrant article's in.
Excellent,
Thanks,
thank you.
guys. Appreciate it.
One other point, just to the previous discussion, going forward, if you're trying to anticipate the tax rate impact of a particular amount of money, $1 million at our current tax rate is about,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
a $1.30 on the tax rate. We have a $13 tax rate, pretty much, so $1 million is about an additional $1.30. Bear in mind that as that gets added on, you know, if it's $14.50 next year, then it's gonna be $1.45 would be
Right.
the impact for $1
Right,
million.
'cause you get the 2.5, right.
Yep.
So, you know, when you're figuring out your impact for borrowing.
That's assuming no big debt service is falling off, right?
Right.
I mean, that, in a general
It's a big
sense,
assumption that
if the
things are
budget
pretty much-
increases by $1 million between this year and next year, it's gonna increase the tax rate at current values by approximately $1.30.
Yeah, okay.
Just as a, you know,
As a
sort of
rough-
a-
just rough
sort of a
number.
rough
Yep,
number
yep.
you can use. in your head.
Penciling it out.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Very good, thanks, gentlemen.
Much
Have a good night,
appreciated.
guys.
Okay, so our warrant is open, let's just hold it open for now.
Pardon me.
All right, so we have FinCom here, we requested the FinCom. Yeah,
All two of you guys?
we requested that we had some discussion with FinCom based on the free cash
Yes.
and what we were gonna do. If we got a message that you took a non-binding vote.
Did we take a vote? I know we discussed it. I don't remember
300,
if we took a
100
vote or
was
not.
the number?
Those were the only two actual votes.
Oh, okay.
You did vote for the amount going from free cash to capital.
300,000, right?
300,000.
About 100,000 stabilization.
100,000 to
The stabilization.
stabilization.
200,000 for ice, we're
We're
gonna
gonna
keep,
keep
and 500,000
200,000
in our,
for
in
snow
our
and
kitties.
ice.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
So can we do that quick reconciliation? We had,
Yeah, we
I
did
did
last
this, and
week.
I
Yeah.
had it, but, Mike, can we just run these numbers, because there was an unanticipated issue that FinCom wasn't aware of, is the schools have
we know
come
about, we heard
for the 250.
We talked
We've
about
heard of it, but we haven't had any discussion on it.
Right.
We can give you our
What
opinion.
was that, the 250 for the education?
Special education.
Special ed?
We don't have to ask for it.
Right,
Oh,
we
even,
even-
oh, okay.
So I did a quick reconciliation, I had it, and I left it home. Let's do that math real quick, real rough right now.
I did it, mine's down in the office, so
You wanna run down and grab it?
I think we can do it by hand.
Okay,
faster
Yeah,
than I-
we know. what it
We,
is.
as we understood it, we have 1.1, right?
1.1 million.
Right, so we're putting 100,000 in stabilization to keep our.
Well, let's back up.
bond.
Let's take everything off, and then we'll see where
And
we're
then
at.
see
I'd
where we
rather
go.
do it
Okay.
that way.
All right.
So we had 1.1, we had
Okay.
snow and ice of how much?
200,000.
Well, we're just saving snow
We're
and ice.
saving,
I
yeah.
understand, right,
It
right.
might be a mild winter, we might be
Or it
fine.
might be worse.
So that's down to what, 900?
Yep.
Right.
Okay, and then we had, potentially, there was some other stuff now.
100,000 in snow and ice, 100,000 in stabilization. We
Right.
wanna
But I
do
want to
that.
hold those two for last.
Okay.
The reserve fund and the stab fund, I want to hold that for last.
250 for the school.
Minus 250 for the schools,
Whoa, whoa,
potentially.
Wait,
whoa,
wait,
whoa,
wait,
whoa,
wait,
whoa, whoa,
wait, wait.
Potentially,
Boop, boop, boop.
No,
Just
nobody.
trying to get to a discussion number for a minute.
Okay,
I don't agree that you put the 250
Well, see,
in right
I
now.
understand that.
Okay.
Let's hold that opinion for now.
Okay, I will hold that opinion for
Okay. So 900 minus 250 is what?
I don't know, you're the accountant.
kind of 650.
I'm not the one out of calculator. Okay, and then there was $100,000 for the FEMA.
That's out.
That's out.
Oh, that's not
I
it.
hadn't
Paid
heard of that.
100,000 back.
We,
Yeah.
we did not get the grants.
Yeah, the FEMA match grants for the water mitigation at Pearlie and the high school. It was potentially $400,000. We had to put up 100.
We didn't get it?
They
Did
didn't come
not get
through.
it.
Oh, okay. I hadn't heard of it. I don't.
Okay, what other items were there, Mike?
Announced it at the,
Oh.
at the school building committee
Oh, okay.
last week. 85,000 for the feasibility.
Feasibility study. Yep.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
So then, what's that put us? Who's doing the math?
650.
565. Did I do that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So that puts us at 565. And there was nothing else, right? That I can remember that had to come out.
We did snow and ice
Potentially
at two.
come out. We haven't agreed that they're out, but just to
Right.
get to a number where we,
Okay.
so that we can discuss it, and then we'll talk opinions.
Okay.
Well, the stabilization and the
Right.
capital.
Before that, there was anything else that was coming out in the warrant articles? No, right?
No.
That was it.
So you got about 100.5
Capital fund.
after the other two.
After
Right
the
now,
other two come in.
after the 3 and the 1, out of that 5 and a half you got there.
Is that right? Yeah, that's about.
Okay, so here's a big assumption. So if we had 1.1 million, we hold 200,000 out for snow and ice, 85,000 for the potential school feasibility study for the high school,
Right.
and a warrant article, because it could pass, right, for $250,000 for the special education.
It could.
Right,
Could.
it could. Now, I want to be prepared that, you know,
If it
I want to
comes.
assume that that's gonna pass. So that leaves us $565,000. Right. So let's get back to, tell me why, or tell us, kind of give us some background, how you arrived at 300, 100.
Oh, the 100 is to keep us at the 5% of the budget. So that's the recommended amount of money that we should have in our stabilization fund to keep our interest rates low when we bond, which we're doing a lot of. So, I mean, that makes, I don't like the stabilization fund, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's my
It's our rainy
opinion
day
is
fund,
it's where
basically.
money goes to die. I mean, you can't use it. It's just to keep
Well, we
people like you happy.
Well, yeah, well,
So what happens to it? It has to get voted on at town meeting
take-
to use it in the stabilization.
yeah. If you,
Oh, it does,
it
but
takes a
it's,
2/3 vote to move money from the stabilization fund.
move it out. It doesn't take 2/3 to
No,
put it in.
2/3 to put it in and.
Well,
to
thought
put
it was
Either
out.
way? Okay.
Right.
All right.
We've,
I don't remember that,
we've
but
used
anyway.
that in the past.
Yes,
To fund the $77,000
right,
fire
right.
truck payment.
That's right.
Right.
And I know that my days on FinCom, there was a lot of discussion around that issue. For me, I use the 5%. It's a rule of thumb. I mean, we can be a little under, we can be a little over.
Right.
I'd rather be over, and I would rather fund the stab fund in
Right.
good times. And we are not in good times, but potentially free cash wise, we are.
Yeah.
And again, I would like to pad that stab fund a little bit more
Then 100.
than the 5%. I use that as a rule of thumb.
I don't like
You know,
that.
because we may be thanking ourselves later on that we moved that thing up, that fund up to 5.5% or 6%. Again, potentially.
Okay, I don't agree, because
Right.
once it gets to 5%, essentially you're there. You're at the recommendation of most people.
We fill
So
the
why
square,
put more
yeah.
in there when you could use it for something else? That's
Right,
my,
understand.
okay.
At the
That's
rate
all.
we're going, we're gonna need to put 100,000 in there every 2 years. Right? If we're gonna
If there's
increase
growth.
2.5%.
That could be, that could be.
At least.
So
So just.
Well, but then we won't be bonding, so you can,
potentially there's some, but see, I don't look at it just as a vehicle for bonding. I look at that as the overall capital and surplus of
but you can't use it for anything.
well, you
It's-
can.
well,
You can need a town meeting
around
vote.
the
you can.
edges maybe, but you can't. I mean, anyway, this is,
Again, that's a philosophical.
yeah,
discussion.
that
Stab
is.
fund?
Okay, so 300,000 was for capital.
Well, 300,000 was for before we heard that the number for the special ed article one. The number we got, which was what Mike was aware of at the time, was 125.
Right.
So
That's what I
you know,
was
okay, 125, but 250. I mean, traditionally, if it wasn't a warrant article, what we would say to the school department is, first of all, I understand they don't know what the number is, that they have not done an
could
education
come
plan
back
for
to
this
us.
child.
Right.
So, what we say to them is, you have to spend this money, and come spring, at the town meeting, we'll take care of any problems, rather than give them the money now.
Well, this money for this 250,000, is that for one child?
It's not, from what I understand. There's some additional families, and again, we don't get into the specifics.
No, you can't.
We
It's
really
for
can't.
privacy, right.
They pretty much level service that in their budget, from what I understand, from what Ian
Right.
said. And if there's anything above, then they're always out of balance. You know,
Right,
it-
and they don't
because-
have a choice.
But they really don't have a choice. This is the way it's done. And then you get the circuit breaker money back from the previous year. It's one of those unanticipated things, and we were fully aware of this going into the budget season.
Because they don't pay you back to the next year any
Right.
refunds, right?
And if they
You don't
give-
get it all back either.
right, and,
Well, of course not. The
Right,
state
70
never gives you it all
right.
back.
That's right.
Even
So-
though it's our money, but
and part of in the agreement is if we give them 250 and they only spend 125, the 125 is coming back. You know, that's not going to get lost in the budget. No, we're going to hold that. We're going to make sure that happens. Anyway, so that being said,
Okay.
So the 300,000. Did you get a list from CIP what the actual
No,
outstanding?
no, Andy hasn't had a meeting yet.
All right.
I mean, again, the 300,000 was a number that we just wanted to put in there
because we had so
before
much,
we knew.
we had enough free cash,
Right.
and
Right.
we've skimped in that whole thing for so
So,
long.
you know, I certainly that number is
we
negotiable.
we wanted to put some money in there where we could do some serious things.
I
around
mean,
town.
we do have infrastructure issues
Yeah.
in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the more money we put in this, the better we're going to be in the long term.
Right.
I don't disagree, but just keep in mind that, one thing to consider is if you take out the actual cash coming from the general fund and the operating budget, we've spent a tremendous amount of money on CPC funds and capital improvements over the years,
True.
right? So
True.
I just, be careful with just the comments that we're not making any investments in infrastructure. We've spent a hell of a lot of money
Well,
on capital improvements over the last few years. coming out
We've
of
done
CPC.
better in the last few years. Most CPC funds don't go to that. They go to buying open space and things like
The
that.
bulk
There's
of it
not
does,
a lot.
but
yeah.
we've spent.
Well, we've
several
started.
hundred
We've
thousands,
started
and
spending money on infrastructure, but we still need more.
Don't disagree.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're being responsible with some of the capital improvements that we are making
yeah.
in town. So
Well, yeah, I
I
mean-
hate when people say we're not. All the money's going to pay people. It's not. We're actually spending some really good money on capital improvements over the last years.
It's been, in the past 3 to 4 or 5, 3 or 4 years, we've really done a lot to.
Yes.
Because the
Right.
knock was 4 years ago was why plan? We don't have any money,
Right.
and that wasn't the right approach at all. And we've since moved past that, and we've done a lot. We've done highway garages, the highway roof. We've done the roof here at the public safety building. We've done a lot of.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Just to name a couple that come to the top of my
Right.
head.
Right.
We're doing the ESCO project. That's still, that's more.
That's huge.
That's big project. In terms of capital improvement. So, all right. So we've got some. Again, without a list though from CIP, and I know I've attended some of those meetings, so I know their list is quite long. They could probably spend over $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
We have. We had septic issues too, right, over at the public safety.
And
building.
everybody
We
needs
paid for
vehicles.
that, care of that,
and-
right?
yeah.
But I'm going back to some of those capital improvements that
Right.
we're talking about. So, I know you can't answer for the whole committee, but you still hold fast to that 300, 100, considering we only really have, in my eyes, 565 available.
I would think that the 300 is something we could talk about. The 100. I'll ask you guys. I think we should. I'm not a big fan of the stabilization fund, but I think we should put the 100 in there to get it at 5%, because we're looking at bonding.
Right. And our policy says what, Mike? We should go 25%, or is it 50%?
Up to 25% in stabilization and capital.
Right.
Each.
So if you do that calculation based on 565,000, it's 141,250 on each account.
Oh yeah. Well, I would rather
That's
put
after we
more
spend it.
into the
Right,
capital
after-
fund than that.
After what?
That's after we spend it. We have 1.1 million, right? So forget about what. I guess the question is we're not basing that policy is set on what the actual free cash is, not on what we're spending. I only say that because it's just a different number. I mean, than what our guidance is. So
We had
if
this
we
discussion
followed,
last
all right, if we followed a 25%, we'd be looking at 250K
Right.
in both. Granted, we can't do that,
No.
but that would be my first choice, right, is to do that. However, these unanticipated or, the deficit spending, we have to consider. The feasibility study's got to go to town meeting as well. I don't have a problem personally with it, asking to put 300,000 in capital improvements. What's the there's $165,000 left, right? So what else are we gonna need money for?
Well, we could need more for snow and ice. And that's what I'm a little skittish about. I mean, we had a mild winter this winter, but who knows what's coming up.
Depends whether you want to believe Farmer's Almanac or not, I mean,
Well, don't forget, there's already 100 in there, so
Yeah.
you're looking at 300 now.
Yeah.
And our average is like 350.
Right. I'd like to kick the number down, to be honest with you, on the capital improvements. I can't, I'm not comfortable with 300.
I don't want to kick it, all right, kick it down to 250 then. I don't really
but
want
if
to
you,
kick it
if you
down
kick
too
it,
far.
if you kick it down, what do you do? We're at 165 right now that we've got free.
That puts you at a little over 200.
Yeah, well, but forget about the 200, Jim. We're 165. What are you going to spend the 165 on? So you've got
Well,
to pay.
that's what he was saying. He's afraid that if snow and ice goes,
Well, I mean,
above
yeah, okay.
200,
So 165, and we've got
finally
300,000
got
here. It could go to $500,000. I mean, I assume, but that
We finally have that snow and ice right where we wanted. It took us some time to really
Yeah.
get to that
yeah,
point.
we were always a little skimpy there, and it was always
Well,
hard.
Well, we always had to
Wait,
struggle to
the-
fund it.
Right.
Yeah, the other thing that we might need in the spring, if we reapply for the FEMA mitigation and get it in the second round, we'll still need 100,000 in the spring to do the match.
So,
Or the school could take it out of their operating.
I thought there was a reserve account that we tried to fund as well.
yeah, there is. We put, 96,000?
95.
95,000.
We've spent some of it already.
And is that coming out of the budget, or we try to put that in from free cash?
Oh, no,
No, that's
no,
budget.
that's a budget line. It's
Yeah,
a
budget line item.
budget line item every year.
For unanticipated
Right.
costs. So, I'm on the opposite side of the stab fund.
Yeah, I know.
If I could get the stab fund to 10%, I would. But, that's just me.
I know.
Because it's the rainy day fund.
I know, but you can use it.
You can
You
use
get
it.
punished if you use
Yeah,
it.
See, this is called a warrant, Mr. Lacy. We can use it anytime we want. We bring it to the taxpayers, bring it to the townspeople. But anyway, that's for discussion for another day. Okay.
I don't know. I think keeping the 250, keeping at least 250 to put into the capital fund is more important. And, your point is, how much do we have? What kind of expenses do we have against the 250 in the capital fund? Well, same thing. How much do we have to spend the now 215 on? So,
All right, well,
so anyway, that's our 20 cents.
Mr. Fowler.
Two things. You didn't want to, you've talked briefly about the school. Do you, I guess you can't speak for the board, but has this happened before where they come looking for free cash to fund things, and what's been the history in the
No,
past?
never. I've never come
So,
across
but you
that.
haven't had a chance as a board to make any decision on this, on which way you'll go, okay?
Well, our initial decision was it's 125, and we didn't have all of the other things. It's probably doable. So I think there was kind of a nodding agreement at 125. Haven't had the chance to talk about 250, no.
No, but
Okay, then,
250 is a lot.
Yeah.
it's a big increase. Second,
And particularly when you don't know how much the Ford's going to cost you. It's kind of like you're telling us you need a new car, and you just say, "Gee, we want 25,000. What does it cost?" Well, we really don't know yet. Well, why don't you see what it's really going to cost, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
But in their defense, they don't know until those 30-day plans are done.
Oh,
with
right.
each
No,
specific
I'm not
child.
saying that
So-
they do.
No,
It's tough.
no,
It's a
we
tough-
understand that, but I'm just
But
saying
we
is
shouldn't
that,
have. We really
but-
shouldn't have a
but
warrant
you-
article for it
Yeah,
without
you-
knowing what it is.
when you say $250,000, you just kind of, okay, where did that come from? I mean,
Well, they've done their research on that.
well, then
she did start
if
breaking
they've
down
done that research and
transportation
they didn't pull it out of there, then they've got some basis for that then.
Right. But they
Which-
can't really share it with you based on, it gets to be you know, how many families, who the family, you know, it gets a little, you gotta keep that pretty private, so.
Well, I don't think anyone really.
I mean, they could say
Nobody
three
really wants to know
families
which
that
family.
But again,
Nobody
it doesn't
cares about
matter.
that.
What matters is how firm are they on the 250,000, and it doesn't sound like they are, from what
Yeah, they weren't.
I'm hearing.
They didn't really know.
Yeah,
Yeah, so,
I mean, I don't.
I think they were going for an up to, in order to have a bit of a cushion.
Yeah.
Well,
let me do
We
this.
haven't put a number in there
Right.
yet.
Right.
Well,
let me speak like candidly. One thing I think we're a little sensitive to is that, you know, we've got some free cash, okay? It's a nice pot of money. And we sit down, we've tried to spread it around and fund those things and make sure we have enough money for the snow and ice and capital improvements and such as that. And then all of a sudden, you know, we get this, bam, you know, 250,000 from the school on this. And I just want to make sure that just because it seems like times are good, that we've got the money here, that we're just all going to go for a grab bag on it. And I don't
No,
know.
that's not-
Well, I don't know, because you don't have any numbers. You if you can't present anything to me to show me what that's being used for or why, or some firm numbers, to me, you're just pulling it out of the air. So.
Well, let me say this. We did ask Ann that, and the issue is, there's not enough time to make that determination based on the evaluations of the
Right.
Well,
students.
that's okay. But
But
that's
that's why
okay.
they're coming with this number, and then they'll disclose whatever the number is, if there's if they're at 125, the 125 comes back to free cash in the spring. From the way I understand it. Now, maybe
Right,
not
that-
spring, but maybe.
Next year.
Next year. That's how it's gonna go.
And that's how it's
It'll
gonna
be
go.
part of next year's. It can't come
So
back.
it's
yeah.
a timing issue. If they had
Well,
brought this to the
actually, it
attention to
could.
us 30 days earlier, and they knew 30 days earlier, then, you know, those evaluations are being done, and then they have to see what course of action has to be taken. So that's the reason why. They've held back a little bit.
This is,
Again,
you know.
Again, I really, you know, in all honesty, I think we got the input from Ann, you know, and school committee at last point. As chairman, I'm gonna stop the discussion on the 250.
Sure.
We're here to talk about the STAB fund, and we're really here to talk about the capital improvement. So let us get to that decision. As far as the 250, we kind of discussed that with, you know, not having the other body here to discuss it, I think is a little bit unfair. We got the answers from them last year. Last month, last
They
meeting.
don't know. I mean, I don't know what
We were
you
pretty
can discuss.
comfortable, you know,
Okay.
getting it on the
I'm-
warrant.
yeah, I'm not.
Whatever that number is, let the townspeople decide, you know,
Okay.
whether they want to fund that or not. That, again, as chairman, I think I'm gonna do that.
That's okay. My
Secondly-
question was as it happened before.
Right,
Then
okay.
Then I had a second question, if that's okay.
Sure.
And that was, looking ahead, we talked about last week, I know we don't have the full chair, and the full board here, but we've talked in the past, you've talked in the past about perhaps on the general budget in the spring, putting do you know if we're gonna intend to keep a line item in there for capital? Or do you think we need to continue to fund it the way we're funding it now?
Oh, no, there is a line item in this year's
Yes.
budget for capital.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I think we should keep it in there, yes.
But it was pretty
So-
small, though. The number was pretty small.
No,
186,000.
Yeah, it was,
Yeah,
it was
so it was
185,000, yeah.
We expended like 70,000 of that or something?
Yeah, well, yeah, we were just being a little careful of
knew
bonding
what
too
we
much
were
of it
doing
and
already, so-
eating it all up, you know, for several years.
Right, so
Yeah.
just Peter's dump truck or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it was.
So it was almost like doing it through free cash.
A little bit, but with that money is there in the budget. You know, it's a line item now.
Right.
Right.
Well, it's just, I think when the line item is, the money is less, you tend to be more careful because you do have less. When you get a little bit more, then you kind of open it up some other things we would kind of like to do less.
Right.
And that's kind of what the 300,000 was, you know, is that there's, instead of just looking at things we gotta have, Peter's dump truck or a lawnmower or whatever it is, now we've got some things where we can do a few things which are those kind of nice things to have, but we haven't been able to afford it. Now we can. So we had the 1.1 million. That's why you saw the 300,000 go in there, at least to give it to where they had some money to work with and do and entertain some of the things they couldn't entertain before. So it basically doubled almost what they had before, from the 165, 185 to 300,000. And that's the
Well,
only
there's some
reason.
money in the capital.
There's not
fund
much
anyway.
left over for
There
them to
isn't.
do
There
those
isn't.
other project list stuff, because that money was earmarked before we even, you know, before they even got there. So CIP really, again, Gary has the full, let Gary finish with his.
So if I can, so if we invest this money in there now, I just want to be sure how it works. would the capital improvement committee be able to expend it, or would they just make recommendations?
Oh, you'll know, they make a recommendation to town, it's a
And then-
two-thirds
then-
vote out
so
and
it
in.
would be at the
With that one,
spring,
too.
we would be giving them the funds now to work with for the spring town meeting.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure that we understand that's how it goes. Now, what about the line item that's in there now? Because that wasn't, I'm happy to see the line item in there that got put in there, but I wasn't happy with the way it was expended because the capital improvement committee didn't really get it. I mean, we pretty much followed their recommendations, but it didn't go down that way yet.
Really? I don't know.
You know, it'd be nice to tie that to a number. And I think Gary has brought this suggestion up in the past, so I don't want to steal Gary's suggestion, but if gross income, you know, gross receipts are X, you know, X percent of that would be funded to capital improvements, right off the bat. You know, I don't know what that number is, that might be something that FinCom may want to discuss, you know, whatever.
I mean, I think we-
1% of gross receipts, what are we at, 24
I mean,
million?
as a line item, you mean?
Yes.
I think it's a wonderful idea, we just
240,000
have to
goes
get the funds.
Right,
I mean, I think
right.
we put as much money into that line item as we felt we could.
Right.
And we're hoping maybe that.
And keep a pad, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and
We
to
kinda
increase
backed-
it.
We kind of backed into it, rather than every
Yes.
single year saying.
No, we
200
don't. I mean,
1% of
Yeah.
gross income, you know, gross receipts is gonna go into that fund. So that we're not in the situation we were 4 years ago, where we had zero,
Right.
and we didn't, you know, we had all this huge list, you know, and we're paying for some of those, you know.
Past transgression where you didn't have any money.
And that's
Yeah.
where it's all starting to hit everybody all at once. You know, I agree, you know.
Yeah, how do you do that? But I don't disagree, I mean, I think it's a good idea if
But where
you
you
if
gonna
you
get the
can
money?
figure out a way to do it. But again, I'm personally hoping going forward that we can put additional monies into that line item. So, anyway,
I guess looking forward, what I want to say, we'll put this in, it'll give the capital improvement committee something to work with. Hopefully, just as Phil mentioned, the community preservation. I mean, the town has done a great job. That committee has done a great job of figuring things out. And I think now we're giving the capital improvement committee some funds. I think they can continue a tradition similar. And I guess what I'd like to say is what we could do if we fund it again in the spring. See, last year we funded it and we spent it. I think if we fund that again in the spring, it would perhaps be what they would work with for the next year.
oh, again,
I guess
that's a
so
line
that-
item,
so
that
that
185 is a line item, it isn't like free cash that.
That's a
You know,
budgeted number,
yes,
correct? So they can
yes.
just come for, where do they have to come for approval to spend it?
Would be the CIP.
Okay.
All right, Phil, question?
I don't know if this will make any sense, but I'm gonna just throw it out there anyhow. I guess, I've seen a lot of the expenses and the improvements that we've made over there, and, has anyone ever did any sort of analysis in terms of, from a comparison of, the budget of how much we've been using annually over the last 3 years, how much have we been expending in capital for capital improvements? And the reason I ask is, are we overspending on capital improvements? Which may sound counter to our discussion tonight, but if you look at the ESCO and you look at the CPC funds that we've been spending over the last few years, as a percentage of the operating budget, I would love to get an analysis of that. Because when times are good and we're spending all this money, are we over-investing in capital? You know, I know stuff needs to be replaced. Sometimes you have to take a hiatus, you know, for a little while to actually make some of those capital improvements that we want to do it, but it's going to have to wait because because we've done A, B, and C, and D, E, and F have to wait. It may sound counter to what we're talking about, that we don't have enough money for capital, but I'm kind of thinking that we're spending a lot of money on capital improvements in this town, and I don't know if there's an alternative to invest the money somewhere else, put it away for a while, or to continue the path that we're on. I just think that that's an important.
Well, Phil, there may be some validation of what you're saying there. I mean, only been living in town a short time, but I can tell you that every FinCom board time I sit, when we talk capital improvement, mood is that we don't spend enough. I mean, I think that is.
Well, that's why he's
Yeah,
he's
well,
saying it's
I know.
counterintuitive.
But, and I
Yeah.
think that's because
Well-
they're looking at that. But at the same time, as a newer guy that hasn't seen the track record back for 10 years or something, only seen recently when I've been there where it's been discussed. I don't really know, but that's a good question. I wouldn't mind finding it out myself because I really don't know, to tell you the truth.
Well, I guess my only disagreement that I would have with Phil is, again, counting most of that CPC money as capital improvement. It really isn't. There's an awful lot of open space purchases and things like that. Now, they have done a lot with the park and rec. You know, I agree, that's true. But I guess what I'm talking about is, for instance, we had the worst time up until this year with police vehicles. I mean, they all had almost 100,000 miles on them.
No,
They
not
were
at the
costing
same
a lot of
time.
money to repair all the time. They would get to the point where they were dangerous. And we finally was able to put some money in their budget so that they have some decent police cars. And I think probably the first thing that we're looking at is mostly vehicles. Peter Durkee needs 2 more trucks. He's got 3 old trucks. He needs 2 more.
we have a fire
Buildings,
truck
there's
that's-
buildings, roofs
There's the
and
communications, all of the
communications.
fire
equipment.
department, all the chiefs wanting radios that extend more than
right.
a
Probably
block.
put a
and-
list of $10 million easily together. on
Oh,
capital.
absolutely.
Oh, I'm sure you could.
Absolutely.
However, the question is are we overspending now and going to run into a problem later? I don't know that answer.
Yeah.
Again,
No,
it's
no.
counterintuitive. but
No, it's a good question.
I don't know how you would analyze that. I mean, if you look at all of the things that are in front of us, and you can assign some sort of priority to them, and we look at those and say, yeah, man, we got to do those. How you can sort of back down and say, are we spending too much? I mean, that's the only way we have of assessing our capital needs, is to go out there and look what really needs to be done.
Yeah, and Phil, where you
And
say,
I don't think we've ever gotten beyond that.
And there's no funding cliff here, because we've either funded it with free cash, or we've had it in a budget line item. The highest it's ever gotten is 186,000.
It's only 1 year. It's the first year we've done that.
There's been no funding cliff. We're not on a spending spree.
It's not
for the-
sustained. I understand that.
It's
I
coming
just-
from different pockets of unspent money.
I know. When I hear we're underinvesting in capital improvements, there comes to a point where there's a tipping point. And,
Oh, true.
And I don't know if we're even there.
it kind of depends. If
go
you ask the
up.
fire chief about it, he'll tell you, well, no, I need my radios. Or if you ask the police chief, then no, I need a new thing for the car, or cars or whatever. So in each one of these department heads, they all think that they need that stuff, and I'm not sure where you say, is it overspending? Well, it's kind of depends on which department you're talking about. But all of them, I mean, if you go down to the water department, they're talking
that's
about
about it.
filters.
They
They're
have their
talking
own
about,
money
yeah,
for
well,
that,
I
though.
understand that, but they're all needing more money for different things. And
But I think
so.
Phil's point is good. I think it would be nice
To know the
it'd be good
percentage
to have
and-
maybe the last 5 years, 5-year history of
It would
capital
be good to
improvements
see
that
that.
we.
I'd like to see it myself.
I don't know if
Yeah.
overspending's the term, but
Is
you know,
there-
at
is there a
least
way to
see the
do that?
percent
Look
that
at-
we're
I think it's
going with.
It would all
maybe-
be free cash, I would think, for the most part, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's all coming out of free
CPC,
cash.
free cash, right?
Yeah.
So, so then that just goes back to are we, well, I think CPC is a good mechanism for spending on capital improvements. Should we be, in addition to, because it's our tax dollars still going to improvements, should we?
And what areas
should
are we
be
spending
asking
in? I don't know. Maybe
CPC?
certain areas we're spending a lot more money
At the
than
same time,
another.
we're asking to do all the other capital improvements. Again, we need data.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right, that's all my.
Then we
a good point.
can, part of that argument is, we're not spending enough. Oh, yeah, well, look. we've
Well,
done
and
it.
where is it
Right.
being spent?
Right.
Is
Well,
the
that's
other
back to
issue.
which areas are you spending it in. There may be areas that like Phil says, there may be areas that we're spending
We're not spending
a
enough.
huge block in that
Right.
we haven't even thought about it, and there may be others we're totally neglect. I don't know, but I'd like to see that too.
Gary.
It's a
I-
project.
You wrote it down.
Can we have it
agree
by
with
tomorrow?
Phil that- No. If you look over the years, we have, I mean, just another short amount of time, we're doing we've done the roof, got an emergency to do the septic field, the boiler down at the school,
Yeah, just
and they
put 'em
all
all.
add up. I guess for me, what it is it's more the mechanism of how we're doing it. They're all coming to us as an emergency that's gotta be done, and we've been fortunate enough to do them out of generally free cash and things of that sort. So,
And that goes to the maintenance
I-
part. Are we spending on enough in maintenance and just replacing?
well, yes, so
That's subject to
I mean,
be-
I am agreeing with you that we have. I just hopefully funding something up front, hopefully that they will be able to make the correct choices and we wouldn't be in that emergency situation.
Well, Gary, what you'd
quite
like to
so
see them
often.
do is they could actually
Yeah.
sit down and do some planning and know that they have some money that they're gonna have versus in the past where they've made plans, but there's no money. You can plan it for all you want, but we're not gonna fund it. But it's nice to go through the exercise and that's what we've been trying to push away from with funding this sum.
Well, we were there 4 years ago. 4 or 5 years ago, we were there. And it was, you know, when I asked about, you know, where's the list? Well, we're not gonna put a list together, not the existing CIP. Don't take that the wrong way, guys.
No.
So, it was like, well, why do it? We don't have any money.
Well, in
Well,
fact,
what do you mean?
the CIP,
What do you mean?
everyone
You gotta
left
do it.
because they
Well,
had no money.
Dave,
Why bother
to be
doing it?
fair, they had a list. In the list, they had a list they had done 5
Everybody
years
laughed.
previous.
Yeah,
and
yes,
then
that's
nothing
right.
was accomplished
Right,
on that
that's
list, so
right.
they, you already got a list.
Listen, I'm
going
not
on.
being critical, I just trying to.
Oh, yeah, no.
So
no, we're not.
He's being
Going back to where we were. Okay, all right, so we as a body need to make a decision on how much we want to transfer from free cash to the STAB fund and the capital fund. I'll throw out a couple of numbers. I'm comfortable with putting, although I'd like to put more, I'm comfortable with putting $100,000 into the stabilization fund, and I would be comfortable moving $215,000 to the capital fund.
Was that 250?
215 or
250.
215,000, which would, if you take and do the math, that would leave us an addition, $250,000 for contingency.
1.5.
Yeah.
1.5.
215,000. yes.
Okay, I would flip those, but that's my.
215 to the capital fund, 100,000 to STAB fund.
Yeah.
That would spend 315,000, that would leave us an additional, if I have my math right, Mike, $250,000 for a potential snow and ice issues. That
Oh,
would leave us-
no, that's, you got 450 for everything. 'Cause
Well,
that-
200 plus an additional 250.
Right.
So that would leave us $250,000.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that would be that's my recommendation. If anybody wants to make a motion on that, take them individually, I would, again, just my suggestion, 215 and 100.
So, Mr. Chair, to spend capital, it needs to go to town meeting as well,
Yes,
correct?
sir. And the warrant has to come in front of us. The warrant has to come to, it has to be a warrant article. Whoops. And we have control over whether it even gets on the warrant.
Right.
From the beginning, so we have full control over the funds.
What is your,
This isn't my usual, but, I did.
Well, let's do, Gary, just one second, let's do
Okay.
finish, because he was in the middle of a question.
I was just curious on what your thinking is on 215.
215 and 100's 315, which leaves us 250,000 off of 565.
Okay, so just to keep a quarter mil cushion.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Just in case
Thank
we
you.
need it for snow and ice. We already have 200. We could go with a bad winter to 450, 500. I just, I don't want to fall behind on that snow and ice fund, because I've been there before, lived through that, and I didn't like it. In my other days as FinCom member, I just
Well,
didn't
even
like it.
even at 250 is still more than we had.
Right.
So
There's what, 85,000 in there now, Mike? In the capital fund?
Capital, yes.
So it's 8515, there
Oh,
you
I
go, there's
see.
your 300.
So you'll end up with 300.
There you go.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm always
Not-
thinking.
well,
Anyway, that's my suggestion,
Like
is
that end game.
215 and 100. Gary, you have the floor.
Well, if I could, let me see if I can do this, not my usual, but I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, to start with one, and to move, $100,000 from free cash into the, stabilization fund. I don't know whether I need to mention special town meeting article or anything for that, or,
No, it would be
we
tied
just
to
voted.
that
Yeah.
warrant article.
the tied to the
To the,
stabilization fund warrant article.
I'll second, I know what he's saying.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to move $100,000 from free cash to the stabilization fund. Did I say that right? Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries.
All right, Mr. Chair, I move that we appropriate $215,000 from free cash to the capital fund for Article STM 13-08.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Yes,
Mr. Fowler?
I would prefer to change it to 250.
Okay, well, you'd have to make that motion, and somebody would have to second it. You making the motion?
Well, I guess I would have to make a motion to amend it to 250,000. a total of 250,000, so I don't know whether you wanna add to the 215 another,
No, you can change, your amendment was to amend the motion to read 250,000 versus 215.
correct, that would
It
be the
needs a
motion.
second.
I'll second that motion,
Okay.
even though I made the original motion.
Okay, so we need to vote on the amendment to the motion. Discussion, anybody have any discussion on that? Personally, I disagree. I think we should stick with the 250 and we'll round out the account to 300. And we'll leave us $250,000 in free cash. So, that's why I will be voting against the amendment. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay?
Nay.
I'll say nay.
Okay. So, we're back to the original motion, which is $215,000 transfer from free cash to the capital fund. Any discussion on the motion?
The only reason why I say nay is if we don't spend it this year and it's left over from snow and ice, we can use it for the capital
It's
fund.
coming back.
We
That's
still
why I
No,
have
that,
it.
you don't, I'm hopeful that we won't need as much for the school, so.
Right. We may have a bunch of cash.
There
All
could
the
be,
above.
there could be,
Right.
yeah, all the above,
Okay.
exactly.
But, you know,
Right.
we're funding, that's still a decent amount. I mean, so that's.
It's more than
I
we've
think
been-
Yes.
And it's showing good progress
And that's,
forward on
as
it.
a matter of fact, for one's fiscal year, that'll be a
Right.
huge amount.
And don't forget, we had the money that we transferred from the reserve give back from the assessors. We also budgeted $186,000 in the
That's
regular
what I'm
budget.
saying, right?
So that's 186, Mike. What did we move from the fund that the assessors gave us into capital? Do you remember what that number was?
Last year?
Yeah, we just did that recently, right?
That was last
The last
Spring.
spring.
Yeah, when they gave us the money. How mu-
74,000 in each fund.
All right, so 74, 186,
Oh, yeah.
now 215. That's a pretty good chunk that we're putting in to the capital fund. Okay. All right, so I'll move the question. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
We're
you.
gonna keep you here
Welcome.
this
Thank you for
late.
inviting us.
And when's the next FinCom meeting? Do we know?
Oh,
Next Wednesday.
oh, that's right. Well, he hasn't heard yet. He's trying to get the school building committee to come and talk to us.
Well, yeah, next Wednesday if we can get them to come to,
Right.
this is their third invite. Because the first one they never replied to, this one they didn't reply to, that's right.
Well, I'm on
It
that
is.
committee, so there was no, it wasn't done on purpose, so.
No, I know, I'm just telling what our chairman said, because
He sent them something.
he sent me, they
Tenth.
didn't
Tenth?
respond.
Yeah.
And then we had
Is
it
that next
scheduled.
Wednesday?
Yeah, it's a week from Wednesday.
Yeah.
Week from
Yeah,
Wednesday
we're
is
trying
what,
to
is
move
what we're
affordable
asking to
housing
do it
meeting.
now, where we can
When
talk
is
about
when is town meeting? The 29th,
Ninth.
Monday, the 29th
And
of
we
October.
also,
We got
I
some
don't know
time.
if they're aware, you may wanna make them aware of that,
The additional meeting?
yes.
Yeah.
On the 20th.
I don't want to,
20th.
let's go.
Wait a minute, no, no.
Okay, so there is gonna be a meeting on the 20th.
10 a.m. at the middle high school,
Right.
community meeting.
Right, so we would ask FinCom to also, I know Mike was gonna send out a
Oh,
communication on that, right? We talked about that at the school building meeting the other
Yeah, I
night.
thought
this is a meeting on the school
To
building.
talk about the school building, for the public to come in, you know, anybody
We're gonna
that's
send it
interested.
to all departments.
All, yeah, it was all
And
boards.
All boards.
We're gonna be
What-
invited.
Which date is this now, the?
The
20th.
20th.
Of
Saturday,
October.
Saturday, the
20th.
20th. At 10
Saturday.
o'clock.
It's on
10
a
a.m.
Saturday,
high
10
school.
o'clock at the middle high school.
I'll be back from Arizona.
Are you supplying donuts?
Basically yeah,
From
we already asked
Carol
Carol,
is-
yeah, Carol is.
For you, sure.
And
Oh,
so,
is she?
so that everybody's aware, and
She
if,
volunteered.
if you weren't, you know, didn't get a chance to catch the school building committee, so that everybody in the town
That's a
is
good
aware
idea.
that
Give 'em the
on the 20th,
opportunity.
Board of
Yeah.
Selectmen will be there.
Yeah.
And we invited all boards to, you know, attend the meeting and ask as many people that are interested to, you know, townspeople to come on down. We're gonna talk about the school project.
Can we, can you guys, I would like to ask if, through you, if you wouldn't mind, if this agenda, if we can have a detailed agenda of what exactly we want to get accomplished in that meeting? I mean, I know theoretically, but this meeting could go on for days.
Right.
And I'd like
And
that,
that school building is gonna put that together,
that'd be great.
put that agenda together.
I think perhaps Mike should.
And where's this gonna
Right.
be?
Well, Mike's part of that committee, so Mike can help put that agenda
high school.
together.
The high school?
Yeah. In the high school cafeteria, I guess?
Yes, sir.
Oh, the auditorium.
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 Well, the donuts will be in the cafeteria. But, so 10 o'clock.
Get
All
there
right, gentlemen,
early.
thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Good night, thank you.
Thank you.
If the school building committee stands you up again, I'll be happy to come and talk to you about it.
Okay.
And what time's that gonna be at?
10 o'clock.
10.
Okay, let's get back to our agenda here. We have minutes to approve from September 24th. I entertain a motion to accept the minutes as
So
presented for September 24th. Gary moved it. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, we have a request from the planning board, for the board to lay out Abbey Road as a public way and refer back to the planning board. Also have a request from the planning board to lay out Cedar Lane as a public way and refer back to the planning board. Mike,
What does that
any
mean?
color on this? Well, I guess they need our approval to go ahead and pursue, to make these two particular roads, or one's a lane, one's a road, public, making public roads and bring them into.
Is that acceptance? Like road
Yeah,
acceptance? Okay, thank you.
They'll be on Springtown meeting,
Okay,
so they're just, this is starting the process.
okay.
Right, so we need a motion on those two, Mike. Any discussion on this? Gary, you're more of the town map historian, knows issues. Any issues on these that you're
No,
aware of,
I
Gary?
mean, I looked them over. I guess I would have preferred if somebody could have been here in case we had any questions
Right.
to have asked. I mean, but it looks pretty,
So if this
Well,
is-
you gotta get another bite out of this. 'Cause
Yeah.
They're gonna do,
this is,
they'll present the layout to you.
oh, yeah.
You're just asking them
to
to,
go ahead and start it,
to do the.
start the
report.
process?
Yeah,
Okay, so it's not a final vote or anything like that?
that's correct.
Okay.
You're asking them to prepare a report on the proposed layout of those two streets.
Okay.
It's a non-binding report and will be returned back to you in 45 days.
Okay. All right, so we need a vote on each one, a motion made on each one. So I'll read it and somebody can just accept it. I will entertain a motion to request the planning board provide us with a layout of Abbey Road as a public way, and that's it, pretty much, right? With the report due in 45 days?
Well, that's what the
So that's the motion.
statute is.
Anybody want to?
So
Second.
moved.
Oh,
A move and a
second.
second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Same thing. I would entertain a motion to request from the planning board a layout of Cedar Lane as a public way with a report due back to us in 45 days.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, let's get back to the warrant. As far as I can see on the warrant, though, we still have some of these articles out of order. Like Article 1 is okay, because it's 1301, and 1302, then we go to 1303, 04, we get to capital fund, it goes back to 08. Can we fix these so that 05 is next, 06, 07, and 08?
Well,
Those are the tracking numbers.
Yeah,
I'll put article numbers.
we don't have article numbers yet.
Or the STM number, can we make sure that they go in order of STM number and then fill in the article number, is that how it
That's
works?
not the way you wanted it. You
No?
want it in this order. You wanted
Pembroke,
the
okay, yeah, that's right, excuse me.
Elm Street
Pembroke,
is-
Elm Street Middle School, right, okay.
Elm Street's
Right,
3.
backwards, okay, I got it,
Yes,
yep.
Tim, are just tracking numbers.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
When the articles come in, just.
Yeah, I got a little
Because they
confused.
don't, I know.
All right, sorry about that. Yep. All right, and then the new one is at the end, which is number 11. But not article number, it's just the STM.
Yep.
Tracking,
Right.
okay, so we're all set on that. We need to close the warrant.
Mr. Chair, I move that we close the warrant.
Second.
Just to clarify, that's dated October 29th, 2012. We have a motion and a second to close the warrant dated October 29th, 2012. Any discussion on the motion? Gary, I know you didn't want to close it in the first place because you knew we were going to open it again. But that's all right.
That's
I
okay.
remember that from last week. Okay, hearing no discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries.
Carry.
Okay, Mike, ESCO update. Anything to report on the ESCO?
No, it's still progressing on schedule. I spoke to the project manager and he said they will be done on December 15th,
Right.
which is actually 30 days ahead of the contracted date.
And that's the whole project.
Yes,
Great.
Wow.
What was the date?
December 15th.
So we'll get the savings, additional savings.
Oh,
then.
they need
Heat,
to
electric.
meet their, otherwise if the savings aren't there, it's coming out of their pocket.
right.
So they have
Unfortunate.
all, this is a very incentivized
Crew.
project.
Yeah.
I guess
It's all about incentives.
Good.
Isn't that great how free capitalism works, you know?
It is.
Wow.
Okay.
Amazing.
If I can ask a question?
Yes, sir.
I guess it's,
Mr. Fowler.
it's starting to get cool. Where are they? I would say to me, the most important thing at the boiler is how are we doing on those?
Yeah, we don't have our boiler, well, our boiler's still, our old boiler's still here, but the only problem that could present itself, well, they don't need historical permission to replace the boiler, but to do the cooling tower and venting some of it, they do need historical, and I've been reminding them on a weekly basis. They just haven't been able to get the drawings together. I was told I'd have, in my meeting this morning, I was told he should have the drawings by the end of this week. Then I can present them to the State Historical Society, and they may not even need permission, because they're talking about possibly putting a cooling tower on the other side of the parking lot and pipe it underneath the parking lot.
Okay.
Because it is gonna be, it's about 10 feet, and it's gonna block the first floor window in the Board of Health office.
That's not good.
And we would lose a handicap parking space, but we'd have to, cannibalize the parking on the other side to replace it. So there are advantages to putting it out on the other side of the parking lot. And that hasn't been decided yet, but they're leaning heavily towards that.
And I guess in that that date, will everybody be educated in how to run these things? Or will that come?
That'll be, the worst case scenario, it'll be put on manual operation until they get the controls in.
Will they hang here, I guess, for a while?
Oh, yeah.
Perhaps, yeah,
Yeah.
so that it all goes smooth.
They have to train us that's part of the contract. And get it commissioned properly. They'll be fine tuning these systems, for a while.
Okay,
They'll probably be doing that through January.
okay.
Great. Okay, we need to approve the poll workers for the upcoming election for November 6th, so everyone want to take a stab at that?
Do we have a list?
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the following poll workers for the November 6th state and presidential election. And then read everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth Davidson, Warden, Precinct 1. Etta Hollowell, Warden, Precinct 3. Pat Dugan, Clerk. Kathy Sachs. Arthur McDonald. Alan Hollowell. Sandra Brock. Steve Epstein. Jeanette Lang. Pete Zabel. Margaret Anderson. Ron Marshall. David Bogdan. Earl Johnson. Star Anderson, Warden 2, Precinct. Beverly Knapp, Clerk. Carol Chouinard. Chenard, I think is how we say it. Clerk. Margie Weaver. Joe Young. Pat Lesnar. Robert Davidson. Margaret Weaver. Cynthia Tardif. Lawrence Mintz. Robert Kennedy. Nancy Anderson. And John Schultz.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second
Thank you, sir.
on the poll workers. Any discussion on the motion? Trying to get Phil back in the camera here.
I guess, just thanks, because I guess, isn't she lately having trouble filling these? But
It's a lot of work. It's a long day.
Yeah, it's a long day, so
Especially
yeah,
it's
definitely
presidential
thank you
election.
for
This
doing
is gonna
that.
be a lot of work.
Much appreciated.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next meetings, Monday, October 15th, right here at 7 o'clock. Don't forget, we have the October 20th meeting at 10 a.m. at the middle high school. And then our other meeting would be an hour before town meeting on the 29th. And to remind everybody, special town meeting, October 29th. There's a lot on the agenda, so please, let's try to have as many people there as we possibly can. So please save the date and see you at town meeting. Okay, any other new business to come before the Board of Selectmen tonight? Okay, hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
We need signatures, that's for the warrant.